Well, hey everybody, welcome back to Pursuit of Purpose. I'm Robbie and this is Chuck. Today I'm going to let Chuck tell you what our show is going to be about. So thank you for joining us and I hope you enjoy the show.
Today we're going to talk about anxiety, obviously very common, and we're going to go a little bit more into some definition and definitely what to do about it. So first I want to start by giving you 4 definitions of anxiety. They're going to be probably from the most common, Rob, to the most depth. The most common is what we call apprehension. We do it every day. We do it tens of 20s, if not 100 times a day. Following directions, making sure we catch an exit, maybe looking up a phone number, something along those lines. Apprehension happens many, many times a day. The next one is one of my favorites, and that is an eagerness to do well. Like you and I doing this as part of our pursuits, is we want to do a good job. So if I am counseling someone, Rob's in a coaching situation, or whether it's even doing a task around our house, we want to do a good job because those things typically we can measure to some degree. And like something we like to say often in the professional world, what gets measured gets done. If I'm going to put my time and effort into it, I want it to go well. But that too is a level of anxiety. Both you and I have been competitive athletes, we've been competitive as businessmen, and that's part of that particular era. The next thing on the level of graduated anxiety, going a little bit deeper, and that is when the byproduct of when we try to control things that we don't have control over. Unfortunately, we do spend a lot of time and energy obsessing and ruminating about things we have no control over. And we should be able to categorize those things. Things should come up, folks, and I know we're not supposed to use the word should a lot, friends, but things come up and oftentimes we will try to embrace them as our own when really we should be putting those into a category to say, I don't have any control over that. Like the weather. Oh my goodness, it's going to be rainy today. What an inconvenience. Nothing I can do about it. Or other natural things that could happen. But there are a host of things that we can control, and we might go into some of those today before the day is over, that you and I often talk about in our training, such as how I feed my mind, how I change my perception of things, and also how I respond. Those things we can control. And later, maybe in the show today, we'll talk about some of those core values that you and I often talk about in trainings. Those core values are things that must mature as we grow. That's why we question everything, because the answer to those questions, the pursuit of understanding, changes my values. Not in dramatic ways. We get pretty set by a certain age, but we're fine-tuning and fine-tuning. We even form a community based on those shared values. We tend to community, friends, family, whomever, that share those same values. And the most deepest, most impacting anxiety, and it doesn't happen super often, and hopefully it never happens to you guys, but it does happen. And this is the best definition of a panic attack that I've ever heard. And I think this will segue into some of your thoughts. And that particular definition goes like this. It is the nearness or the presence of a perceived danger or death. So oftentimes, folks may find themselves in maybe an uninformed situation. I can't get somebody on the phone. Oh my goodness, is this a tragedy? And their brain will go to these terrible places of thought. They don't know that it's a real thing, but they can't quite stop that momentum of fear, and that consumes them to the point of some type of paralysis or overreaction. Unfortunately, it happens to folks, and once we go there and they walk back from it, all kinds of consequences come from that. Maybe they're a little embarrassed, maybe they wish they hadn't, but it's oftentimes easier to go there again. Granted, there are folks that we deal with as coaches and counselors that have been in traumatic situations, no fault of their own. Maybe they were in an accident or some professional situation or a personal situation, that close call, as we like to say, and it does leave them with that level of vulnerability. We understand that. However, it is still pretty rare, but it's the fear. It's the fear-driven behaviors that can cause us so many problems as life goes forward. Maybe you can speak to that.
Absolutely, and I appreciate those definitions. I believe those would be helpful to pretty much anybody. And interesting thing about it, and I've dealt a lot with anxiety in my personal life and in my married life and family life, and also in my professional life studies and everything else, dealing with clientele. And it seems to me, and back to that last definition you gave, where you, let's say you're sitting at a stoplight and you think about making a right turn, and then all of a sudden your mind extrapolates this formula that went all the way from your right turn to, if you don't make it home by the time you're supposed to, everyone in your family is going to die. So that one right turn turned into death, right?
Yes.
And in your mind, in your body even, you can have a physical reaction to this feeling of fear that is not in the actual moment. It never really happened and won't really happen. But the manifestation of those feelings is as real as this table, is as real as this sign.
Yes.
So your perception is so real that fear becomes crippling. It becomes your reality.
Yes.
So then you are given way to what is known as a panic attack, right?
Yes.
Then you're paralyzed.
It does. It leaves you in such a state of constraint,
Right.
that I'm starting to sacrifice in the moment a level of function that I must have for productivity. And if I don't reclaim those in any sense of near future, I can get stuck there for quite some time with all kinds of cause and effect. We are always in locomotion. Our thoughts are always in locomotion. Even our bodies are in motion. Even when you're resting and you're asleep, your body is still moving. So if I start to, that's what's happening. When I'm in a panic situation, in a sense, all of my function goes to protect my vitals. Yes. So therefore, my hands and my feet aren't working well. I know that sounds a little extreme, but that's kind of how it works.
Well, the hard thing is that so many of us that don't experience these actual panic attacks have difficulty relating to people that do. And not only that, but the people that do have the panic attacks have a horribly difficult time accepting counsel from someone who doesn't experience it. They don't think that we can relate to them, that we just minimize how they feel, or we're trying to just like make them feel small in some way.
Right.
And we don't. None of us, you and I at least,
right,
and most of the counseling community don't feel that way. We realize that it is real. Right. And I can actually admit that while I may not have had a debilitating panic attack per se exactly that way, I have experienced extreme anxiety to the point that it stopped me from my future plans or from my plans in the moment. Mm-hmm. And what would you say is a good practice when a person could be experiencing that? What would be a practice that might break that cycle in that moment?
From a helper's perspective, yes, or from a person panicking?
Well, from the person in the attack.
If you do find yourself in one of these panic episodes,
yes,
it's likely you may not be able to stop momentum in the moment, but my hope is, and I really do think confidence is, that you can put yourself in the safest possible place. For example, if you're driving, pull over.
Yes.
Find it. Even if you pull up in somebody's yard, I mean, they'll figure it out when they get to the car. Like, I just need a moment, and your system will come back online. It may feel like you're not going to come back. You will come back online. That's happened to many of folks. They've called me as their counselor, and I happen to be available, and they're in a panic episode, and they'll say, "Chuck, what do I do?" I say, "Get off the road." And then they'll pull into a parking lot as best they possibly can. And then what do? I go, nothing. Just sit there for a moment. Then I will often say, focus on one thing that you can see. Look ahead of you. What do you see? I said, look at your steering wheel. There's the logo to the car. Look at the logo. What do you see? And then next thing you know, they're spelling the name, the brand of the car. Well, what color is the logo? Oh, it's blue. Okay. And then slowly but surely, reality starts coming back into their purview. Then they can see the dashboard and the radio. Now they're looking outside. I said, if you need to, crack that window. They let natural, healthy things start coming back in. I know that seems so slight and like, well, who would think of that? Well, when you're in a panic, you don't think of those things. So a lot of times, and we know this as business coaches, folks will go into various, say, negotiations or meetings. Maybe they have to go meet with a supervisor of sort. They're psyching themselves out of the meeting. So
Right.
we will actually train them, find a focus, find a focal point. What could that be? Maybe it's the face of your watch. Maybe it's an image on your phone. You can put a screensaver on there that gives you a better place to go to. I have screensavers on my phone that are actually scenes, and I'll use them sometimes. I'll look at them and just take a moment, and then now I'm ready to go. And I know you've coached folks into some of those focal points. So those are the kind of things that can actually help us reclaim control,
Yes.
and then walk ourselves back into expanding that territory of control.
There's an example I like to use, and maybe it'll be useful. Hopefully it will. So let's say you were approaching a large building, okay? You're approaching a large building, and you need to get, and you want to get to the top floor. Let's say it's a 5-story building. And you walk inside and you realize that the building has no elevator. This only has stairs. Well, view this building as your anxiety or your fear. Can you take one step and make it from the bottom to the top? It's impossible, right?
Impossible.
There is no human alive that can take one step, one hop, one jump, whatever it may be, and make it from the bottom of a 5-story building to the top. So what must happen in order to go from the bottom to the top and overcome this massive structure? You've got to take it one step at a time.
Yes.
So you focus on the smallest possible part, the easiest possible part, and that regains mental balance eventually,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So I hope that analogy is helpful.
It's a perfect analogy because that person in this analogy wants to get to the
Yes.
5th floor. They want to get there. Now, they may tell you what's up there. They may say, I have a meeting that I can't miss. And they may start describing it as a need. As counselors and coaches, we will come back later and say, well, do you need to be at that meeting or do you want to be at that meeting? And if we can get them to start claiming it as a want, then I want to take that first rung, that first step. And once they do that, then they start climbing. So oftentimes if I'm speaking with someone in a high anxiety moment, I'll say, tell me what you want. And their first answer, which is, I get it, it's a stressful answer. They might say, well, I want to feel better. Of course they do. So go deeper. Give me a better want than that. And then that want may have a little bit more substance to it. Like, well, I want to relax. Well, let's do relaxing things. And then we'll start working on breathing. We'll start working on bringing in familiars. It's a want rather than a need. And you speak to that very well about that difference between needs and wants, and the reason that one of those lends more to anxiety, whereas the other one is an absolute antithesis.
Well, since you alluded to the value of understanding the difference in needs versus wants, I'll discuss that a little bit. Needs-based thinking, if you can think to any time that you have expressed that you need something, there's a metaphysical reaction in you that becomes small. Your mind starts thinking of the most limited possible outcome of the situation, the most limited possible resources that you'll need to accomplish whatever it is you're expressing. And what happens is the results become small. The results don't become what you actually wanted. They become the bare minimum. You actually, in those behaviors and processes, you manifest less than you wanted because you only aimed at what you needed. And the difference in desire and want is that want or desire is unlimited. There is no limit. So when you focus on your desire and your wants, you open yourself up to unlimited potential. So then you start to understand that each small step towards what you want opens you up to not regretting or not having anything smaller than what you actually desire. And the results are phenomenal, even just in your thoughts inside yourself. So what would be a preventative process, a practice that someone could adopt to, if they know they're prone to such things, they know they are. So what would I do if I was to say, let's say next week I know I'm going to have this meeting where, as you said, I'm going to go into a boardroom, I'm going to talk about something, and it's a week away, and I'm already thinking about it. Now, I'm not going to likely have an anxiety attack just yet, but I'm going to work myself up to it. How do I if I can feel those doubts and the smaller parts of fear and anxiety coming in, what would be a good behavior that I could practice to prevent that going up to it?
I think one of the first things folks could do, that's a great example, one of the first things folks could do is to stop and think, what are you letting yourself believe that you need to come from this meeting? Let's say it's a sale or a close or a certain amount of revenue. Say, okay, you're letting yourself believe that you need that. They'll say, yes. I said, let's back that up. Then what do you want to bring to the meeting? Because that's really the only part that you can control. What kind of person do I want to be? I want to have a polished presentation. I want to be an ideal representative, an ambassador for my product or my service. And I want this receiver to have the best of what I can offer. And I am going to prepare that as best I possibly can, if not better than that, so that when I walk into the room, that's what they get. I cannot control what they hear. I cannot control what they receive, because they have influences that they're bringing to the meeting. And I cannot convince them of anything, but I can influence them of so much. So my job is to be the best possible presenter I can be. So when I come out of that meeting, I'll know I achieved what I wanted, which was the presentation. And then I trust nature will take care of the rest.
Sounds like to me what you're saying is one of the best practices to overcome anxiety is practicing on yourself.
Yes.
To find something small improvement about yourself and practice that behavior.
Yes.
In the moment, right now.
Yes. One of the things I often tell folks who say come into my grief classes, they're in a tremendous hole. I mean, it's almost heartbreaking to see the state that they're in. And I will encourage them at the end of almost every meeting, go out into the next week and find no less than 2 things, and you'll find more that you will take to completion. And you'll find those to not be difficult things. You will fold a basket of clothes. You will wash a few dishes, because you can do those things. You won't go hungry. Now, you may not eat ideally what you want to eat, but I bet you won't go hungry. And let yourself feel that little moment of congratulation, like, I did that. I took care of it.
Yeah, celebrate the victory of that one task.
Yes, and as you get closer to the next week when class comes around, I want you to write these things down. If you're not bringing a notebook to class, bring a notebook to class. Always bring something to write on, friends. Always have something. And at the end, by the time you get back to next week's class, I bet you'll have more than a few. And then you'll have something to share with the rest of us, and we'll all benefit from that, because either we will see ourselves in that, or we'll aspire to do that for us next week. The same, I would say, with someone who's going into maybe one of these more a corporate challenge, or maybe it's with a customer. We deal a lot with folks who work in retail. Yes. I'm going to walk up to a customer, and I want to make the best possible presentation, whether it is items on the shelf or whether it's things on the menu. But I want to make sure that they know that I'm here for them. I'm listening to what they say, and I am prepared to represent the best of this product and service. I already know it. I know it. I have it mastered, because I have walked around my world, my kitchen, my yard, driving in my car, and I'm going over and over and over and over it. I'm ready. Whether they are ready to receive it or not, I can't control that, but I am prepared. And so just like the person who's been doing these little things along the way, what are they reclaiming? I can regain victory. I can regain a sense of control over my life. even though I've had this terrible loss that's happened, there's so much of me that's still here, and it's talent, and there's evidence of it. In 1 week, look at everything that I've done.
And not only are they gaining control per se, but they're also regaining the ability to desire at all. And that's something that we tend to, especially when we find ourselves in an anxious mode, we tend to lose sight of our ability to want. And we actually see shame in us wanting, as if we don't deserve to have what we want.
Right.
And some of the takeaways I want to focus on, I want to reemphasize that. Number one, take the small steps first. Focus on the smallest parts first, right?
Yes.
Then celebrate each small victory.
Each one.
So each step in that 5-story building, each letter on the steering wheel that you start to see when you're coming out of the fog, each basket of clothes that you wash, every little part of the small things that you do, celebrate those victories. It doesn't have to be with someone else. Celebrate them to yourself.
Yes.
And another important takeaway is write. Journal your things. Write down your victories. Write down your struggles. When you write it down, look at it. Pretend like you step outside of yourself and look back. Look at that person writing that down. What did they write? And look over your own shoulder and pretend like you're reading your own writing, like as if you're the teacher grading an assignment. Did you do well? Did you write down the truth about what you felt? Mm-hmm. This is for you. The practice of writing is not for anyone else. So there's no reason to lie to yourself. Write down the truth and write down the whole truth about where you are and where you want to be. And if you do that, you can process the proper small steps to accomplish those goals.
Yes.
So
one of our good friends that we interviewed, if you want to check out our podcast, it's our friend Tracy Young, and she compares and contrasts optimistic versus pessimistic thinking. And she does it beautifully. And to be an optimist is to say, hey, I did that. I have the ability to do that. So I do this little exercise with folks sometimes, and I'll just give you a version of it today. Maybe we'll come back with another show on it. And I call it the rule of 15. And if you can start your day with 15 minutes of investing in yourself, whether it's listening to something valuable or what have you, we're book reader listeners, and I hope you have a habit of those things. That's start your day, get you a cup of coffee, sit in a room, and just consume. And don't outthink what you're consuming. Just know that it's going to have a positive effect for your day. Your day is going to be taxed. There's going to be stress. There's going to be attacks because nature is competing every day. But we're going to compete back by investing in that. And then close the day with something similar to what you said. Take 15 minutes, have a bit of a list of what you've done for the day. You probably already keep a calendar because organized people do. And look at that and go, hey, what went well and what could have gone better? And when I say what went well, don't be passive with that. Look at that and basically say, that actually went pretty good. I did that. Now, could I have done a tad bit better? Always leave room for improvement. Nothing wrong with that. But what went well? Take a moment.
Absolutely.
And then, what could I have done better? Because guess what? If not tomorrow, in a few tomorrows, it's going to come up again. And you will have another chance to get better and better and better. Do you know what we call people who get better every day, friends? We call them winners. And I know everybody listening wants to be a winner.
And I love the way you said that. When you're writing, as I said before, tell the truth. And tell the whole truth. You can't tell the whole truth without talking about your victories. You don't just lack. How many of us, I know that I have, over the years in my struggles, focused so much, solely almost, on the things that I had failed at. And that fed my anxiety. But in this process, tell the whole truth, because you didn't fail all day, every day. At your worst moment, you still had victory.
Yes.
There were still parts of you that were doing well.
Yes.
So tell the whole truth in your writings. Look at yourself as a whole picture, not as a person missing your parts.
Right.
Because you are a whole person.
Right.
The good and the bad.
I often find that interesting when we listen to a lot of similar folks, and we've sat in the audience of a lot of similar folks, and they will say one person in particular, I remember what they said. I can't remember perfectly who said it, but he basically said, it always fascinates me how people can see the things that aren't there. Like what didn't happen today. They see a void. Like, I should have done this and I should have done that. And in his mind, he says, how do you see something that wasn't there? So you know what? Let's just flip the script. Go ahead and see what is there. See what you did put there. Please do that for yourselves. And the profit of that will be boundless. That's that feeling of want, because you're going to catch momentum and it's not going to stop. You're going to want more, you're going to want more, you're going to want more. And it is okay to want. Even scripture says, God says, I want to fill the plans of righteous people. That's an amazing
Absolutely.
promise to be kept. And the writer of Proverbs says that will be filled. And I believe that. That's why we are pursuing the purpose of what is your greater want. And your greater want is not going to take from anybody. Whatever you get supplied as a result of that, you're going to give it away. You're going to give it away just at first, just being an ideal person to be around with good attitude, having not tried to make anxiety go away, but actually embrace it as an energy.
Absolutely. So as we close this episode, and we're going to have a lot more of these type episodes, and anxiety is a topic that we could talk about for hours on end, if not days. But I'd like to throw out a challenge for our listeners. And if you've gotten this far in this episode, I hope you'll take part in this challenge. That in your writings and in your self-study, when you find yourself talking about the void of what was missing from what you had done or hadn't done for the day or the week or whatever it is that you're shoulding on yourself about, I should have done this or I should have done that. Let it happen. Go ahead and experience that thought, finish it out, write it down, and then step out of your own way, look back at what you just wrote, and look at the opposite of it truthfully. What did you do? Because the part that you say you should have done is going to illustrate for you the stop and the start of what you actually did do as well. If you're honest about it, that should is going to it's going to work to stand in the way, but it's not. If you look at it objectively like this, it's going to actually show you, but I did do this. I got to the part where I'm judging myself about, so I did accomplish that much. Give yourself that credit and then celebrate.
Please do. Please, all of those things, and celebrate. Reward yourself. You're working hard. We know it. We meet folks like you every day. We're either on the phone with them, we meet with them live, or they're in our audience. And please take a moment to say, good job.
Say it to yourself. And enjoy the process. Give yourself a grade. Like, tell yourself how well you did, not just in those little moments, but in the overall process as well. Because every day you're getting better just by listening to this. Celebrate that. That's a small thing. So celebrate that. Give yourself credit for it. Listen, guys, I sure appreciate y'all being here. I'm Robbie, and this is Chuck, and it's been Pursuit of Purpose. I hope you guys will join us. We're going to do our best, work towards providing you guys with information that is useful and practical. Go ahead, Chuck. Close us out.
Again, thank you. Thank you for this subject on anxiety. We will come back with more. And thank you for being a fan of Pursuit of Purpose.